Dr. Alex Morgan had been keeping his dreams secret for exactly 4 months and 6 days, which was roughly how long he'd been questioning his own sanity. The visions came every night without fail, crystalline structures that defied geometric logic, mathematical equations that seemed to describe reality from angles that shouldn't exist, and a persistent sense that he was being taught something extraordinarily important by a teacher he never quite saw clearly. The smart thing would have been to see a therapist. The practical thing would have been to increase his sleep medication. Instead, Alex had chosen the academically suicidal option of secretly testing whether his dream equations actually worked, which had led to 3 breakthrough papers in theoretical consciousness research and a growing certainty that his career was about to implode spectacularly. The relationship between quantum entanglement and consciousness, he explained to his advanced quantum mechanics class, remains one of the most contentious areas in modern physics. Traditional interpretation suggests that consciousness collapses quantum states through observation, but recent theoretical models propose something far more complex. Alex gestured at the holographic display showing multidimensional wave functions, equations that had first appeared in his dreams 6 weeks ago and had since revolutionized his understanding of how awareness might interact with quantum fields. The irony of lecturing about consciousness research while hiding the fact that his best insights came from mysterious nocturnal visions was not lost on him. Professor Morgan called one of his graduate students, "Are you suggesting that consciousness might exist partially outside conventional spacetime?" "I'm suggesting that our current models may be fundamentally limited by our assumption that awareness operates within the same dimensional constraints as matter and energy," Alex replied, which was a diplomatically phrased way of saying, yes, consciousness might be bigger and weirder than we thought. It was during this exchange that he noticed her. The young woman in the 3rd row had been attending his lectures for 2 weeks, though she wasn't registered in any of his courses. She appeared to be in her early 20s, with the kind of intense focus that suggested either genuine intellectual fascination or careful surveillance. Most distinctively, her ears were elegantly elongated and pointed, marking her as one of the growing population of alien immigrants who'd begun arriving on Earth following the recent diplomatic accords. What caught Alex's attention wasn't her appearance. The university hosted students from a dozen different species. But the way she seemed to be following his theoretical discussions with an understanding that went beyond typical undergraduate comprehension. Her questions during previous lectures had demonstrated familiarity with advanced quantum mechanics that had impressed even his doctoral candidates. "The dimensional mathematics you're describing," she said now, raising her hand with fluid grace, "would require consciousness to interface with quantum fields through some form of non-local resonance. Have you considered that such resonance might be naturally occurring in certain biological systems?" Alex paused, struck by the sophistication of the question. "That's an intriguing possibility, Miss Kira Stellaris. Exchange student from the Kepler colony." Her accent carried musical undertones that suggested a language evolved under different atmospheric conditions. "I'm studying comparative geology, but I find consciousness research fascinating." Comparative geology students don't typically have advanced knowledge of multidimensional physics, Alex observed with a smile. "I have eclectic interests." After class, Kira approached his desk with the confident stride of someone accustomed to academic environments. "Professor Morgan, I was wondering if you might have time to discuss your research in more detail. Your approach to consciousness quantum interaction parallels some theoretical frameworks I've encountered in my previous studies." Alex found himself curious despite his better judgment. What kind of theoretical frameworks? "Models that suggest consciousness might operate as a bridge between different dimensional states. The idea that awareness itself could serve as a translation mechanism between realities that normally don't intersect." She paused, studying his expression with unsettling intensity. "Your recent papers hint at similar conclusions." That stopped Alex cold. His recent publications had indeed explored the possibility of consciousness as a dimensional interface, but he'd been deliberately vague about the mathematical specifics. The detailed frameworks Kira was describing matched his unpublished dream equations with uncomfortable precision. "I'd be interested in hearing more about these models," he said carefully. "Are they part of your geology curriculum?" Kira's smile was enigmatic. Let's just say I've had access to some unusual educational resources. Alex glanced around the emptying lecture hall, then back at the young woman whose questions seemed to probe directly toward the theoretical territory he'd been exploring in secret. Would you be interested in observing some of my experimental work? I'm running quantum resonance measurements that might relate to the concepts you've mentioned. I would be very interested. As they walked toward his laboratory, Alex found himself studying Kira's profile. There was something familiar about her presence, a sense of recognition that made no logical sense given that he was certain they'd never met before. More puzzling was the way his dreams had begun, including glimpses of pointed ears and musical voices, details he'd attributed to stress-induced imagination until this moment. Professor, Kira said as they entered his lab, may I ask what inspired your current research direction? Your work has taken some rather unconventional turns recently. Alex looked at the quantum resonance array he'd been using to test his dream-inspired theories, then at the young woman whose question suggested she already knew answers he was still discovering. Inspiration comes from unexpected sources, he said finally. Sometimes the most important insights arrive when we're not consciously looking for them. Kira's expression grew thoughtful. And sometimes the most important questions are the ones we're afraid to ask. Alex activated his quantum measurement equipment, watching as the familiar patterns appeared on his displays, the same multidimensional signatures that had been appearing in his dreams for months. What he didn't expect was the way the readings shifted when Kira moved closer to the array, the quantum signatures becoming clearer and more complex as if her presence somehow enhanced the equipment's sensitivity. Fascinating, she murmured, studying the readouts with an expertise that definitely exceeded geology student level. The resonance patterns are much more stable than I expected. You've seen similar readings before? In a manner of speaking. Kira met his eyes, and Alex felt that strange sense of familiarity intensify. Professor Morgan, what if I told you that your dreams aren't as private as you think they are? Alex's blood went cold. What did you say? Your dreams. The crystalline structures, the impossible mathematics, the sense that someone is trying to teach you something important. Kira's voice was gentle but inexorable. What if I told you that those visions aren't coming from your own subconscious? The quantum array chose that moment to emit a harmonic tone that Alex had never heard before, and he realized that whatever conversation was about to happen would change everything he thought he knew about consciousness, dreams, and the young woman who seemed to know secrets he'd never shared with anyone. I think, he said slowly, that you and I need to have a much longer conversation. 3 weeks of working with Kira had taught Alex several unsettling truths about his mysterious student. First, her knowledge of theoretical physics far exceeded what any geology program could provide, even on the most advanced colony worlds. Second, her presence consistently enhanced his quantum resonance equipment in ways that violated several fundamental principles of how consciousness detection technology was supposed to function. Third, his dreams had become exponentially more vivid and mathematically precise since she'd started attending his research sessions. The multidimensional equations you showed me yesterday, Kira said, reviewing his latest dream-inspired calculations while Alex calibrated the quantum array, they described consciousness-matter interaction at a level of detail that most civilizations take centuries to develop. Alex paused in his equipment setup. Most civilizations? I meant most research communities, she corrected quickly, but not quickly enough to escape his notice. The theoretical frameworks you're developing are remarkably sophisticated. Kira, we need to talk about something. Alex turned to face her fully, noting the way her pointed ears tensed slightly, a tell he'd learned to recognize over their weeks of collaboration. I've been having these dreams for months, but they've changed dramatically since you started working with me. The mathematical concepts are becoming clearer, more complete. It's as if. As if what? As if someone is actively teaching me while I sleep. Someone who understands consciousness research far better than anyone on Earth should. He watched her expression carefully. Someone whose voice I'm starting to recognize. Kira's composure flickered for just a moment, revealing what looked like anxiety beneath her usual academic confidence. Dreams can be influenced by daily experiences. You've been working intensively on consciousness research. Naturally your subconscious would process that information in increasingly sophisticated ways. That's what I told myself initially. But Kira, the equations I'm getting in these dreams, they work. They describe quantum consciousness interactions that our best theorists haven't even begun to approach. And lately. He hesitated, wondering how much to reveal. Lately, the dreams include you. Your voice, specifically, explaining concepts that I wake up understanding perfectly despite never having studied them before. The quantum resonance array chose that moment to emit its characteristic harmonic tone, and Alex noticed something he'd been trying to ignore for weeks. The equipment didn't just respond to Kira's presence, it responded to her emotional state. When she was calm, the readings were clear and stable. When she was anxious, as she appeared to be now, the quantum signatures became erratic and complex. Professor Morgan, she said carefully, what if I told you that consciousness research is more advanced in some communities than Earth's scientific establishment realizes? I'd ask you which communities you're referring to. And if I said that certain individuals possess natural abilities that allow them to share consciousness experiences across traditional barriers? Alex felt his heart rate accelerate. Are you telling me that telepathy is real? I'm telling you that consciousness exists on multiple dimensional levels, and that some beings have evolved the ability to operate on those levels more effectively than others. Kira moved closer to the quantum array, and the equipment's readings immediately intensified. What you call dreams might be a form of communication that bypasses normal sensory channels. Communication with whom? With someone who recognizes your potential and wants to help you understand what you're capable of achieving. Alex stared at her, pieces of an impossible puzzle beginning to align in ways that challenged everything he thought he knew about reality. Kira, are you human? That's a more complex question than you might expect. It's actually a pretty straightforward question. She smiled, the expression carrying depths of meaning he was only beginning to understand. I'm as human as anyone who's spent their entire life learning to bridge the gap between different types of consciousness. But my people, we evolved certain capabilities that most humans haven't developed yet. Your people. The Psion Collective. We're what you might call naturally telepathic, though that term doesn't fully capture the multidimensional nature of how our consciousness operates. Kira's admission seemed to release some internal tension she'd been carrying. We've been monitoring human consciousness research for decades, looking for individuals who might be capable of receiving our communications. Alex's mind reeled with implications. The dreams, you've been sending them to me. We've been sharing them with you. There's a difference. True telepathic communication requires willing participation from both parties. You've been unconsciously accepting our transmissions because your mind is naturally receptive to multidimensional consciousness interaction. Why me? Because your research was already approaching the theoretical frameworks necessary for human telepathic species contact. Because your consciousness operates at quantum frequencies that overlap with ours. And because. She paused, her pointed ears coloring slightly. Because when I began monitoring your research, I discovered that communicating with you was remarkably easy and surprisingly pleasant. Alex looked at the quantum array, now displaying readings that clearly showed two distinct consciousness signatures. His own and something that registered as definitively non-human but completely compatible with his mental patterns. So the past few months, you've been what, testing me? Evaluating whether I'm psychologically stable enough for contact with telepathic aliens? Initially, yes. But Alex. Kira's use of his first name carried emotional undertones he hadn't heard before. The mission protocols didn't account for the possibility that I might develop genuine feelings for the subject I was assigned to evaluate. Feelings. Telepathic contact creates emotional resonance. Sharing consciousness experiences leads to connection. What started as clinical assessment has become something much more personal. She met his eyes, and Alex felt a strange warmth spreading through his mind. I wasn't supposed to let you affect me emotionally. But consciousness sharing is inherently intimate, and you have a remarkably compelling mental presence. Alex felt his worldview reshaping itself around concepts he'd never imagined needing to consider. Are you saying that falling in love with the subject of your telepathic research is against your people's protocols? I'm saying that emotional attachment between telepathic and non-telepathic species is considered potentially dangerous by the collective. They worry that such connections might compromise objective judgment or create psychological instability. And what do you think? Kira stepped closer, and Alex felt something like a gentle touch inside his mind, warm, reassuring, and utterly unlike anything he'd experienced before. I think that the connection we've developed proves that human and psion consciousness are remarkably compatible. I think your willingness to accept telepathic communication demonstrates that your species is ready for contact. And I think... She hesitated. I think that what we've discovered together is worth the risk of challenging established protocols. The quantum array emitted a series of harmonious tones, and Alex realized he could feel Kira's emotions as clearly as his own, her anxiety about breaking mission parameters, her excitement about their research discoveries, and beneath it all, a growing affection that mirrored his own feelings. Kira, he said softly, how much trouble are you in with your people? Potentially quite a lot. Especially since my next report is due tomorrow, and I'm supposed to recommend whether humanity is ready for formal contact with the Psion Collective. Alex thought about the implications of first contact with a telepathic alien species, about the scientific revolution such contact would trigger, about the personal relationship that had developed between them against all protocols and expectations. What are you going to recommend? Her smile was radiant with possibility and terror in equal measure. That depends entirely on whether you're willing to take the next step in consciousness sharing. Full telepathic contact, Alex. Complete mental connection with a member of the Psion Collective. And if I agree? Then I'll have proof that human-Psion emotional bonding is not only possible but beneficial for both species. And you'll become the first human capable of direct telepathic communication with an advanced alien civilization. Alex looked at the quantum readings showing their consciousness signatures in perfect harmony, then at the woman whose presence had transformed his dreams from mysterious visions into the foundation for interspecies contact. I have a feeling, he said, that tomorrow's report is going to be very interesting. Alex's decision to pursue full telepathic contact with Kira was complicated by the arrival of Dr. Sarah Kim at his laboratory the following morning, accompanied by two individuals whose governmental credentials and pointed questions suggested that his consciousness research had attracted exactly the kind of official attention he'd been hoping to avoid. Dr. Morgan, Dr. Kim began with the strained politeness of someone operating under considerable pressure. Agent Foster and Dr. Webb from the Department of Xenological Affairs would like to discuss some recent developments in your research. Agent Foster, a woman whose smile could have cut glass, gestured toward Alex's quantum resonance array with predatory interest. Dr. Morgan, your recent publications describe theoretical breakthroughs that frankly seem impossible given your previous research trajectory. We're curious about what inspired such dramatic advances. Alex glanced at Kira, who had gone very still beside the quantum equipment. Her pointed ears were pressed flat against her skull, a stress response he'd learned to recognize over their weeks of collaboration. Scientific breakthroughs often come from unexpected directions, Alex replied carefully. Consciousness research requires thinking beyond conventional frameworks. Indeed, said Dr. Webb, whose academic credentials couldn't quite mask what appeared to be military training. We're particularly interested in your theoretical models describing consciousness as a bridge between dimensional states. Such concepts have significant applications for communication technology and psychological operations. The phrase psychological operations made Alex's stomach tighten with alarm. My research is purely theoretical. I haven't developed any practical applications. Perhaps not yet, Agent Foster agreed. But the mathematical frameworks you've published suggest capabilities that could revolutionize intelligence gathering and strategic communication. We'd like to understand how you developed such sophisticated models. Kira stepped forward with carefully controlled composure. Agent Foster, Professor Morgan's theoretical work builds on established quantum mechanics principles. Any governmental applications would require extensive development far beyond current academic research. Agent Foster's attention shifted to Kira with uncomfortable intensity. Miss Stellaris, isn't it? Exchange student from Kepler Colony. Your background checks came back with some interesting gaps. Gaps? No record of your enrollment at Kepler University. No documentation of your travel to Earth. No biometric registration with Colonial Immigration Services. Foster's smile became genuinely predatory. For someone who doesn't officially exist, you seem remarkably well informed about consciousness research. Alex felt panic rising in his chest as he realized that their telepathic experiments had been more visible than they'd assumed. Agent Foster, Miss Stellaris is auditing my courses with proper university approval. Dr. Morgan, Dr. Webb interrupted, we have monitoring data suggesting that your laboratory has been generating unusual electromagnetic signatures. Quantum resonance patterns that don't match any known human consciousness baselines. The quantum array chose that moment to emit a harmonic tone that definitely wasn't part of its normal operational parameters. Alex watched the reading spike as Kira's stress response triggered some kind of defensive telepathic broadcast, creating quantum signatures that lit up the government agents' monitoring equipment like Christmas decorations. Fascinating, Agent Foster murmured, pulling out a device that displayed real-time consciousness analysis data. Miss Stellaris, would you mind explaining why your neural activity is generating patterns typically associated with non-human sentient species? Kira's composure finally cracked. Professor Morgan, I think we need to discuss accelerating our timeline for full contact protocols. Full contact with whom? Dr. Webb demanded. Before anyone could respond, Alex felt something unprecedented happening inside his mind. Kira's consciousness touched his with desperate urgency, sharing images and concepts at light speed, the Psion Collective's monitoring stations detecting governmental interest in their communication experiments, emergency protocols being activated, the possibility that their telepathic contact attempts have been flagged as potential security threats. Alex, Kira's voice echoed inside his thoughts, they're going to try to separate us for interrogation. If that happens, I won't be able to protect you from the psychological techniques they'll use to extract information about our communications. What do you recommend? He thought back, marveling at how natural telepathic conversation felt once he stopped trying to control it. Full telepathic bonding. Now. Immediate mental connection that will prove human psion compatibility while demonstrating that I pose no threat to Earth security. Will that work? It's our only chance to control how first contact happens instead of letting them turn it into an interrogation and potential imprisonment scenario. Agent Foster was studying her consciousness monitoring device with growing alarm. Dr. Morgan, are you experiencing any unusual mental phenomena? Auditory hallucinations, shared sensory experiences, thoughts that don't seem to originate from your own mind? Alex looked at Kira, whose eyes held desperate hope and determination in equal measure. He thought about the dreams that had revolutionized his understanding of consciousness, about the telepathic connection that had transformed his research and his life, about the choice between governmental control and leap into the unknown. Agent Foster, he said slowly, what if I told you that the unusual quantum signatures you're detecting represent the first successful human-alien telepathic communication in Earth's history? I'd say that's exactly the kind of breakthrough that requires immediate governmental oversight. And what if I told you that such oversight might prevent humanity from making contact with an advanced alien civilization that's been waiting decades for us to develop the consciousness capabilities necessary for peaceful interaction? Dr. Webb stepped forward with the expression of someone whose day had just become significantly more complicated. Dr. Morgan, are you claiming to be in contact with hostile alien entities? Not hostile. Advanced. Patient. And remarkably compatible with human consciousness patterns. Alex moved closer to Kira, feeling her telepathic presence strengthen as their proximity increased. Agent Foster, what you're witnessing isn't a security threat. It's the beginning of a new chapter in human development. The quantum array's harmonic tones intensified, and Alex felt Kira's mind opening fully to his, sharing not just thoughts but the complete experience of psion consciousness, the multidimensional awareness, the ability to perceive reality from perspectives beyond normal human comprehension, the profound sense of connection that came from minds that had evolved to touch other minds across impossible distances. "Alex," Kira said aloud, her voice carrying harmonics that definitely weren't human, "are you ready to show them what human psion consciousness sharing actually looks like?" Alex felt the weight of decision, the choice between safety and transformation, between governmental protection and interspecies contact that could change everything. "Yes," he said, reaching for her hand. "Let's make first contact." The quantum array exploded with light and sound as their consciousness merged completely, and Alex realized that whatever happened next would determine not just their personal future, but the future of human-alien relations for generations to come. The moment Alex and Kira achieved full telepathic connection, reality exploded into something far more complex than his previous consciousness-sharing experiences. Instead of simply hearing Kira's thoughts, he became temporarily capable of perceiving the world through psion sensory capabilities, seeing quantum fields as flowing rivers of light, feeling the electromagnetic signatures of every conscious being in the building, understanding mathematical relationships that described reality from angles his human brain had never been equipped to process. More importantly, he experienced Kira's complete emotional landscape, her genuine affection for him, her anxiety about violating collective protocols, her desperate hope that their connection would prove human psion compatibility rather than creating an interspecies incident that could set back contact efforts by centuries. "Remarkable," Agent Foster breathed, her consciousness monitoring equipment displaying readings that exceeded every known baseline for human neural activity. "Dr. Morgan, your brain patterns they're actually synchronized with hers. Perfect harmonic resonance between distinctly different consciousness types." Through their shared awareness, Alex felt Kira's surprise at the agent's reaction. She had expected suspicion, demands for separation, possibly arrest. Instead, both governmental representatives appeared to be documenting their telepathic connection with scientific fascination rather than security paranoia. "Agent Foster," Alex said, his voice carrying subtle harmonics borrowed from Kira's consciousness, "what you're witnessing is proof that human psion mental compatibility is not only possible but beneficial for both species. Kira's people have been monitoring our consciousness research because they believe humanity is ready for contact with telepathic civilizations." "And are we?" Dr. Webb asked, his military bearing softened by obvious intellectual curiosity. "Ready, I mean." Alex felt Kira's consciousness probe gently at his mind, sharing information at the speed of thought. Through their connection, he experienced her people's evaluation criteria, psychological stability under telepathic contact, ethical frameworks that prioritized cooperation over exploitation, technological development that suggested capacity for responsible interaction with advanced civilizations. "That depends on how humanity chooses to respond to this demonstration," Kira replied, her voice now carrying the full harmonic complexity of psion communication. "My people have been waiting for a human consciousness capable of stable telepathic bonding. Alex has exceeded our most optimistic projections for compatibility." "What does that mean in practical terms?" Dr. Kim asked, her academic instincts overriding her administrative concerns. "It means," Alex said, feeling knowledge flow through their shared consciousness, "that I can serve as a communication bridge between human and psion civilizations. A translator for types of awareness that normally can't interact directly." Through Kira's awareness, he experienced the broader context of first contact protocols, the psion collective's careful approach to introducing telepathic capabilities to non-telepathic species, their concern about psychological compatibility, their recognition that premature contact could be traumatic for civilizations unprepared for mental communication. "The collective has established first contact procedures specifically for this situation," Kira explained, her consciousness sharing tactical information with Alex in real time. "Gradual introduction of telepathic communication capabilities, extensive psychological evaluation of contact subjects, careful monitoring to ensure that human-psion interaction benefits both species." Agent Foster's expression shifted from suspicion to strategic thinking. "What kind of benefits are we talking about?" Alex felt Kira's amusement at the predictably human focus on practical advantages. Consciousness research that could revolutionize human understanding of awareness and reality. Communication technologies that operate beyond traditional electromagnetic limitations. Psychological techniques for conflict resolution that address the root causes of aggression rather than simply managing symptoms. And the risks? Telepathic communication requires emotional honesty that many individuals find uncomfortable, Kira admitted. Mental contact makes deception extremely difficult and reveals personality characteristics that people often prefer to keep private. Some humans might find the experience invasive or overwhelming. Through their shared awareness, Alex experienced Kira's deeper concerns. The possibility that human governments might attempt to weaponize telepathic capabilities, the risk that forced telepathic contact could create psychological trauma, the delicate balance required to introduce consciousness expansion technologies without destabilizing human social structures. Dr. Morgan, Dr. Webb said carefully, "Are you experiencing any negative effects from this telepathic connection? Disorientation, loss of individual identity, psychological pressure?" Alex considered the question, evaluating his mental state through both human and borrowed psion perspectives. The opposite, actually. My sense of individual identity is stronger than it's ever been, but I also feel expanded. As if I'm capable of thinking with resources I didn't know I possessed. The telepathic bond enhances rather than diminishes individual consciousness, Kira added. Proper mental connection amplifies the capabilities of both participants while maintaining distinct personal identities. Agent Foster consulted her monitoring equipment, then looked up with an expression that suggested major policy decisions were forming behind her eyes. "Miss Stellaris, or should I say, representative of the Psion Collective, what would formal contact between our species look like?" Gradual introduction of telepathic communication capabilities to selected human individuals, extensive cultural exchange programs, joint consciousness research projects, and careful evaluation of long-term compatibility. Kira's response carried the weight of official collective policy. The goal is mutual benefit and expanded understanding, not cultural dominance or technological exploitation. Alex felt a sudden surge of pride in both species, humanity's willingness to consider unprecedented contact despite the risks, and the Psion Collective's patient, careful approach to introducing capabilities that could transform human civilization. "There's something else," he said, feeling Kira's encouragement through their mental connection. "The consciousness research we've been conducting together has practical applications beyond communication. Telepathic bonding allows for shared problem-solving capabilities that exceed what either species can achieve independently." "Demonstrate," Dr. Webb requested. Alex and Kira exchanged glances, then focused their combined consciousness on the quantum array's most complex calibration problem, an issue that had been frustrating Alex for months. Through their merged awareness, the solution became immediately obvious, a mathematical adjustment that required both human intuitive leaps and Psion multidimensional perception. The equipment responded instantly, displaying readings of unprecedented clarity and precision. "Extraordinary," Dr. Kim murmured. "The applications for scientific research alone." "This is just the beginning," Kira said, her mental voice warm with affection and possibility. "Alex has natural telepathic receptivity that surpasses anything my people expected to find in human consciousness. With proper training, he could facilitate contact between the collective and human civilization in ways that benefit everyone involved." Agent Foster made what appeared to be a critical decision. "Dr. Morgan, would you be willing to serve as humanity's first telepathic liaison to the Psion Collective? The position would involve considerable responsibility and unprecedented challenges." Alex looked at Kira, feeling their consciousness resonate with shared purpose and mutual affection that transcended species boundaries. Through their mental connection, he experienced her hopes for the future. Joint research stations where human and Psion scientists could work together, consciousness expansion technologies that could help both species understand reality more completely, and the possibility that what had begun as a covert evaluation mission could become the foundation for genuine partnership between civilizations. "Yes," he said, feeling the weight of the decision settle around him like a mantle he'd been born to wear. "I'll serve as telepathic liaison, on one condition." "Which is?" Agent Foster asked. Kira stays as my primary contact with the collective. Our telepathic compatibility is already established, and our working relationship has proven beneficial for both species. Alex felt Kira's joy flood through their mental connection. Besides, she understands human psychology better than any other Psion representative is likely to. Agent Foster and Dr. Webb exchanged glances that suggested rapid internal communication. The Department of Xenological Affairs will need to establish formal protocols for this arrangement, but given the unprecedented nature of the situation, we're prepared to authorize an experimental telepathic liaison program. With full academic freedom for continued consciousness research, Dr. Kim added firmly. This discovery represents the greatest advancement in human psychology and xenobiology in our species' history. It deserves proper scientific investigation, not just governmental oversight. Through their shared awareness, Alex felt Kira's relief at the positive reception their demonstration had received. Her mission protocols had prepared her for hostility, suspicion, even potential imprisonment. Instead, she'd found human officials who recognized the potential benefits of telepathic contact and were willing to approach first contact as a cooperative venture rather than a security threat. There's one more thing, Kira said, her consciousness touching Alex's with warm affection. The emotional bond that developed between Alex and myself wasn't planned or expected, but it's proven beneficial for establishing trust and communication between our species. The collective will need to understand that successful human-psion interaction might require accepting that telepathic contact naturally leads to deep personal connections. Agent Foster's smile was genuinely amused. Are you telling us that falling in love with an alien telepath is now part of official first contact protocols? I'm telling you that consciousness sharing creates emotional resonance that transcends traditional species boundaries, Alex replied, feeling Kira's laughter echo through their mental connection. And that the strongest telepathic bonds are formed between individuals who genuinely care about each other's well-being. 6 months later, the Terran Psion Telepathic Liaison Center was operational, with Alex serving as humanity's first official telepathic ambassador and Kira as the collective's primary representative to Earth. Their joint research had already produced breakthrough technologies in consciousness expansion, conflict resolution, and multidimensional communication. More importantly, their relationship had become the template for human-psion interaction, careful, respectful, built on mutual understanding and enhanced by emotional connection that made telepathic communication feel natural rather than invasive. Ready for today's consciousness sharing session with the graduate students? Kira asked, reviewing their teaching schedule while Alex calibrated the enhanced quantum arrays that now filled their expanded laboratory. Always, he replied, both aloud and through their permanent mental connection. Though I still find it amazing that we're teaching humans to communicate telepathically with aliens. I find it amazing that you still think of me as alien, Kira said, her mental voice warm with affection and gentle teasing. After everything we've shared, all the consciousness connections we've made, all the dreams we've explored together. Alex pulled her close, marveling at how their telepathic bond had evolved from mysterious dream transmissions into the foundation for interspecies cooperation that was reshaping both civilizations. You're right. You're not alien anymore. You're home. Their kiss carried harmonics that the quantum arrays registered as perfect consciousness resonance between human and psion awareness, and Alex realized that his secret dreams had transformed into something far better than he'd ever imagined, a love that bridged the space between minds, species, and the vast distances between stars.